Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of AHMP Dialogues. This is our weekly webinar series where we talk to experts in the fields across various topics, focusing on healthcare marketing, hospital, and healthcare as well. So, in that thread, we've had a lot of news of late of what marketers are allowed to and what they're not allowed to say, especially in this age, this digital age of social media, where we have so many avenues and so many platforms in which we can showcase the services of all the hospitals or healthcare brands that we work with. So as marketers ourselves, we know that we want recognition. We know we want the eyes on us, right? But we have regulators on top of us, and they want us to be careful. They have their rules, they have their regulations. They want us to be cautious naturally because healthcare by itself is a very important and very life um, it concerns with patients' lives, and we do need to be careful about that. So what results now in the industry and what we've seen really is that doctors, hospitals, and healthcare brands are stuck in between in this limbo of what to say and what they can say and what they can't say depending on the regulation. The regulations themselves are not very clear. So in order to help with that and how we stand in 2026 right now, we're going to break this aspect down with some of the people who work with this day in and day out. So on our panel, we have Mr. Athif Ahmed, and he's a partner at Hash Legal, and he's going to help us cut through this whole legal fog. So welcome, Mr. Athif. Thank you so much for being here. On the other side of the panel, we have Mr. Mohammed Ilias. He's a founder and director of BCC Healthcare, and he also chairs AHMP National Core Committee. He's been on the other side of this, like I said, so he's actually running healthcare marketing on the ground, and he can give us a real world perspective of this. For those who don't know, I am Dr. Lakshmi Vaswani. Uh, I was a doctor by training for many, many years, worked on the hospital side, and now I've switched over to medical communications and marketing, and I work with healthcare brands. So in a way, this is very pertinent to others who are in this field because we listen to instructions from the brands, but we also need to give our strategy according to what the rules and regulations are so that we don't get into trouble. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over the dais to Mr. Ilias, and we can take it forward from here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lakshmi. And I'm very happy that we are able to have this discussion now. And at a very short notice, Mr. Athif Ahmed he agreed to actually come to this session very short notice, and I have to thank you, sir, because I tried approaching few other consultants, to help us clarify this subject, and at a very short notice. Maybe I could not bring them because they had other prayer schedules, but you, despite your busy schedule, you could make it for AHMP, and we're very grateful to you for this. And Dr. Lakshmi, as usual, you do awesome sessions, and I'm really a big fan of you. And I'm very happy that we are able to, three of us, get into doing this. The other side, you are also there on the other side, and also you are on both the sides. I can say, I don't know, but anyways. So let us just get started for now. So the very important thing that we've been seeing of late is about this poster, which I'm going to present to you now, which is actually creating a lot of chaos in the market today. So we need to actually find out the solution. Can you all see my screen clearly? Can you all see my screen clearly?
Hello? Yes, we can. Yes, we can see us.
You can see that. Thank you very much. So this is the post, which is circulating everywhere, and I'm getting a lot of messages from doctors saying that, is this true? When is this happened, basically? What is the truth about this? The only thing that makes this really scarier for doctors is that it talks about up to 6 months imprisonment plus fine, subsequent offense up to 1 year imprisonment. And it talks about social media counts as advertising. The ban applies to everyone. And it says, Supreme Court just dropped a bombshell for Indian doctors. It is using certain terms which is actually not the right way of presenting information. If it was presented by anybody, it is all presented in a very haphazard way, in a very mixed reality. Some of it is true, some of it is not, but this is actually causing a lot of tension in the market today, and doctors are literally scared, and there are a lot of people, marketers, we are confused totally as to what to do next. That's the very purpose of having this discussion. So I would like to start with Mr. Atif. If you have any initial, the moment I shared this post with you and I wanted to have this discussion with you on this part, maybe if you have to share anything on this part, you can start, sir. Just give your inputs, and from there on, I will keep proceeding one by one. Yeah.
Sure thing. Yeah, so I mean, firstly, thank you for taking the time out, and I really appreciate you calling me for the session. And I think it's something that's really important, given that we have, especially with social media, the ability of so many of medical professionals today to advertise in a new manner, which may not have been contemplated by the initial rules and regulations as they were set up. The context to this, of course, is the fact that a lot of these rules have been set up like over 20-25 years back, right? In the early 2000s. Given that there is, of course, Instagram, Facebook, and all these other avenues for advertising, they haven't really evolved to the standards that we really require in today's like digital world, and given that everyone kind of aspires to work with the digital economy. Me myself as a lawyer, we also face interestingly similar situation as medical professionals because we're both professionals. So
Yeah.
similar to how you have the Indian Medical Council and the NMC, which governs your actions and how you should like go about portraying yourself to potential clients, we have the Bar Council rules. Similarly, we have also prohibitions on certain types of advertisement and like going out and soliciting clients, right? So that way, I truly empathize. We're in a similar position, but of course, the flip side to this is the fact that has been a lot of controversy, which comes to Mr. Ilias's point as to what that whole post was, right? Of course, this actually started off with the whole Patanjali case, which has been going on actually for the last few years. So, just to give you a very brief background into it, maybe we can jump into it a little later in detail. But essentially, the Supreme Court had pulled up Patanjali because they had made certain very egregious representations during their advertisements. Specifically, what they had said was that they had disparaged other forms of medicines like allopathy, and your by allopathy, I mean like your regular medicines, which your regular sort of doctors prescribe, right? They had also gone so far as saying that certain types of diseases like diabetes and all can be cured, right? So there is a particular kind of prohibition here on what you can say when it comes to certain types of diseases, right? And that is specifically comes under the Drugs and Magic Remedies Objectionable Advertisements Act of 1954. So, what this specifically says is that it prohibits that any person can advertise that a drug or remedy can diagnose, cure, or prevent certain diseases and conditions listed in the act, right? So, this has over 50 conditions, including diabetes, epilepsy, sexual disorders, and cancer, right? So the advertisements when it comes to these particular things have to be very carefully worded, and you cannot go out there and say that, look, I found like a magic remedy or a cure, right? Obviously, from a public perception perspective, it is very important to uh, differentiate between something like let's say a cure for acne or something similar to one of these, right? Because these are of course more serious, the kind of treatments it's needed, and of course whether you can actually call it a cure or not is handled very differently, right? So that was the baseline with which the Supreme Court even proceeded forward, and which they had sort of very had condemned Patanjali in very strong words. Unfortunately, what had happened after that was Patanjali didn't stop, right? So they had again gone and again like had a press release where like several top people in the Patanjali organization had come forward and said that no, actually what we'd initially said was right. After which the court held them in contempt. And finally, I mean, they did remedy what they said, but those advertisements were put up both on social media and on newspapers were very prominent and out there. So this particular post that Mr. Ilias has shared was a reaction to that, and the specific bits of the imprisonment and all of that comes from this 1954 Act, which I have mentioned. Right? So this is my initial thoughts. Of course, I will get into what other aspects of it are as we progress.
Super. Thank you very much for clarity. You are coming on uh, misinformation today in the market. Talked about the drugs and the magic remedies. And,
you are actually misquoting this. You're talking about doctors and a lot of things are happening here. So what I did as a marketer when we get such information is that, I also did the reverse search in the Google. Hope you're all able to see my screen.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so I did a reverse search. It's a usual reaction that we do to just find out the source of, where this information is coming from, just out of curiosity. When I did that, this post is already spread in so many places, and a lot of Instagram accounts and LinkedIn, and a lot of doctors started sharing it. I don't know why. It was all quoted everywhere. And then I found there was one person called Mr. Vivekanand Dubey. He says he's helping doctors prevent legal trouble and all that. And he is the one who initiated this entire thing, is what I got to understand. Because a lot of other people, what they did is they just cut his name, they just cropped this portion of the image, and then they started circulating the top. This is the misinformation which was getting circulated. And what I did was I just went to the thread and I just started voicing out my opinion, saying that please someone send the source or quote the source from where you're referring all these things. But there was no reply as such. And then as a marketer, what I did is just into trying to share. So then when I went ahead and then I just started, doing chat GPT and, using Claude to really verify this information, how far, which part of it is true, or what exactly is true, like what we just now had Mr. Athif say this very clearly about the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act is what I got to understand here, and this is what came up actually. So this has a lot of mixed up information. There was nothing, something called, no such thing called just a drop the bombshell. There was no recent ruling from the Supreme Court on regarding doctors, regarding this particular thing. So it was all completely misquoted and it was completely misrepresented. It had some elements of truth, uh, like for example, talking about certain things relating to testimonials and cured patient posts and all those. There were certain truth elements there, and then there are lots of misplaced elements which made it look something else. So that was actually a lead generation mechanism post which went viral, made people panicky because it was a perfect lead generation tool post which the other person has used, and it all went haywire. So that was the first initial reaction as a marketer. But having got this situation, I always don't go only by this. That's where we consult experts. That's where I approach uh, to just validate whether all this is right or not. This is what I'm getting. This is what I'm getting. Cloud and right, which part of it is and all that, and that's where the help was really commendable. So, would you like to add anything on this? Go on to the next.
And just one more thing, I think that having very rightly said on the practicing side of it as well, right? Like when I was a clinician for more than, I think, 15 years, I was in a tertiary care hospital. I was very much dependent on what the hospital did for my marketing. I had no control over it. They would ask us and they would, on their own kind of, they have their own marketing department. They have marketers with, with different opinions and different ideas of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. So I feel like as a doctor sometimes, which is a really important thing when you're first starting out, young doctors are starting out in this digital age and they have no idea about how to go about this because we're not trained for this in medicine, right? So in this case, our impulse is to then hire a company or hire an agency to kind of do this for us. In the hospital, we are dependent on our marketing departments to do it for us. So we are where it is scary for I know for a lot of my friends, and they put up their hands and say, I don't want to do this only, is because I don't want to get into this trouble. Such sensational posts like this say it's better that we stick to our old ways of referrals, and we don't get into this because you're effectively putting your reputation into someone else's hands. You're putting it into a marketer's hands, and that is very scary for a doctor to do. So while I cannot speak for everyone, but I do know that that's where that concept of ethical healthcare marketing comes in. On what basis are we really doing the best for the doctors that we work with and work for, and the brands that we work for? How much due diligence are we doing to find out what is right and what is not right? So I think that's where, if there are any marketers who are listening to this and brands and agencies that are listening to this, that it's also at this point of time, you may be doing it and you feel like your brand is is going to suffer because of it, but there's a doctor's license that is also going to suffer because of this. And that is a far graver consequence, I think. When you're in charge of someone's social media profile, you may just be a social media manager, but if you don't know the repercussions of what it means to advertise for a healthcare brand, you could end up putting a lot of people into trouble.
Very, very, very rightly pointed out. Doctor. What you said was, I could really, resonate with that kind of communication which was happening with the doctors and a lot of others, right during this time period was exactly the same. Why don't we stick on to the old ways and do it? Why do we have to get into trouble by doing something which, is very, very, very valid. So if I go to the next slide, so I got some things to do. What comes in this slide? So both have any points you can add to that. Because this is the time I feel that I have to break a lot of things open because it's long view. I'll tell you when it. So this is an article which came out in Pune Mirror. Okay? I'm sure Akhil will remember this very well. The date is also here. This is written by one journalist that wrote it. The information contained in this regulation, which was suspended later on. Okay, it was suspended later on. This particular article says that it is in effect. It took the guidelines from there. A journalist doing the research, I don't know how they could get wrong. They are picking up the information and they are saying that it is live. This was completely, totally false information. Then Mr. Akhil had to go and get in touch with the journalist, basically, trying to say that, saying that, this is already in suspension. How can you write it in this? Maybe the journalist himself about this. So I think the point is very no one has any point. Very good. Next,
Yeah. Just a small point to add here. Right. So Ilyas has correctly pointed out, the 2023 codes had actually come into effect, but very soon after that, there was a lot of backlash from the medical community with respect to certain aspects of the code, and therefore it has been suspended. Right. There have been some reports come out after that as well, saying that the code will come back into effect. But speaking, unless it has been notified in the official gazette, that is the mechanism by which any act, rule, all of that comes into effect, right? So the Gazette has then said that it has been put into abeyance, which is the position as of 2026 as of today.
I had a small question, sorry,
Yeah.
regarding this, because yes, it did cause a lot of confusion when in 2023 itself, when that entire thing came out. I was at that time working with a healthcare marketing agency, global one. So then they're aware of the pharma regulations and pharma marketing regulations. But then when this came out, it was kind of a bomb that hit everyone. We had emergency meetings scrambling around to understand how liable we were. But then of course then they retracted it. But I think what confusion it created with, again, I'm not talking about big companies and big healthcare brands and big hospital brands that have established departments that can do this kind of research and they have legal departments to help them out with this. I'm talking about the smaller healthcare facilities, the small multi-specialty hospitals in tier 2 tier 3 cities who are just about coming into this healthcare marketing space. It is incredibly confusing for them and scary for them when these things happen. But then, I saw the switch kind of happen over the last 2 years, where they're waiting for this sword to kind of come down and say, okay, this act is, or this is going to come into being. And in the meantime, they're seeing their friends do the exact opposite, right? There are still doctors who may not be aware of the fact that in 2023 this came out, but they may be aware of it, but honestly don't care, because it's like making hay while the sun shines. Right now, it is not anything that they can catch me on. So I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to put the testimonials, I'm going to put the before and after, I'm going to advertise, I'm going to do SEO, I'm going to do the hashtags. I'm going to have fun till the law actually comes down on me. So in this case, legally, can it be retrospective? Like when the law comes in and is actually come into effect, and that doctor it comes into effect, supposing on 31st July in our future. Then if on 31st July I stop all my campaigns, I say, okay, this is it, I'm not doing anything, because from the 1st of August I'll be liable. On the 1st of August, can the law look back on all my previous posts and then hold me accountable for that, or does the law then start on 1st August onwards?
Yeah. So the law does not apply retrospectively, right? Like, if there's a law that comes into force today, then the law will only apply from the date that the Gazette notification says the law will apply, right?
Okay.
No, there's no retrospective application of law anyway. I mean, just think about it. It doesn't make sense,
Yeah,
right?
it does make sense. But I've had these questions. I know, and it's a very, yeah.
But having said that, what I would like to add here is there is a bit of nuance, right? Because see, the thing is, when it comes to social media in particular, what you put out there doesn't go away tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Especially on things like Instagram and SEO, it's not like I start doing my SEO optimization today, or I put testimonials of like before and pre and post surgery, and tomorrow it gets. Let's say that you do even take it down from your primary Instagram or social media, it's still out there, right? Everybody knows the internet lives for, right? So my 2 cents on this would simply be that use this as a floor on where you think the advertisement and generally the industry is moving towards, right?
Yeah.
As someone that is practicing as a professional, I think um, it is necessary. Of course, it's mandatory for you to follow the law. This ignorance of laws is not excused, but apart from that, it's very important for you to even know where the general winds are flowing, right? If the winds are flowing towards this, you know that sooner that rather than later it's going to happen. And tomorrow you don't want to be caught unaware because of something that you did 6 months ago because it still exists on the internet, right? That nuance bringing it out before a regulator or before a court is a hassle, which you honestly do not want to deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So my advice here would be think of the 2023 regulations as a baseline and go from there.
Thank you for that. Yeah. We can move
Thank
on, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's lot. Okay. So if you let's see now,
Yeah.
blood and water cannot flow together. This was a quote from Prime Minister 5 years ago. And this was during that operation schedule. You know, doctor, he using the quote from the Prime Minister, blood and water cannot flow together. So then he adds, he's a urologist. You see, if you see blood in your urine, immediately consult a urologist, it may be serious. And then it so happens that he gets penalized, if the license gets suspended or something like that, and things happen. So what's actually happening in the minds of people today? Now trying to quote from Prime Minister and then relating to that, what's actually going on the minds? Maybe Lakshmi, you can also say few things. Maybe
I have lots of
but
thoughts
you can,
about. I'm very,
yeah, you can understand. You guys have to guide me.
so I actually want to ask you, Mr. Atif, for this is like, I really doubt that a urologist has so much control over how his campaigns are going. I have seen, if you're on the approving side of these campaigns, you know that you barely have 2 minutes with the doctor to show everything, and then they're looking through, all, unless they're like doing strips and everything with you, that's when they'll actually say it, because then they have to actually say it, so they're more mindful of it. But all of these, like, the posts that are going out generically in there, they hardly spend 2 minutes on evaluating it and approving it. So even then, if this doctor was naive enough to give carte blanche to his marketing team and say, okay, go do it, you have full control over my account, and it was done in like distastefully like this, it's still his account, right? He's still legally liable for this. Or if he can show a contract with a social media agency, can the blame be shifted to the social media agency?
So I think there are two parts of this, right? The first part is, of course, like what the liability directly is on the doctor. And second part of it is what the liability is on anyone who is surrounding the doctor, right? Which could be the hospital, it could be the social media agency, it could be any of that, right? Now, when it comes to doctors, the law is very clear that like attributing yourself directly, you can't do solicitation or you can't attribute yourself, saying that either that I will give you a cure, or that my specialty is better than anyone else's, or saying that I am positioning myself as superior to anyone else's cure, right? So that is, the law is very clear there. Now, when it comes to hospitals, of course, it's a little more dicey, right? Because the CCP, which is the consumer protection laws, do still apply, and there's the consumer protection forum as well, which goes into and checks these. So there's a 1980s Supreme Court judgment which says that services provided by professionals essentially fall under consumer protection as well, right? So a deficiency of service therein can also be approached by someone before the Consumer Protection Act. So now the Consumer Protection has certain standards which apply to hospitals, right? So that includes certain preventions against what is considered deceitful messaging, right? So saying things which are clearly not which are clearly not true is not allowed by whoever it is, right? Whether it's a doctor or whether it's a hospital. Now the interesting part here is this, right? That if you're, let's say Dr. Lakshmi is associated with Apollo or with Sims, right? And let's say they put up your picture there, and then misquote you in a quote there, saying that, hey, we'll whatever, let's say, like, cure your cancer, something like that, right? um then the question really becomes, who is it attributable to, right? Is it attributable to you specifically as a doctor, or is it attributable to the hospital, right? My 2 cents on this, of course, here is that, look, if you're a doctor, please be very careful about what you are okay putting out when it comes to your hospital or whatever group that you're associated with, right? If it is shown that it is personally attributable to you, regardless of whether it's under a brand or a hospital, it's more likely than not that you will be held personally liable, right? Further, the interesting part is that the ASCI, which is the Advertising Standard Council of India, has also put out guidelines, right? Now, these ASCI guidelines are not law, but they are very prescriptive as to what the industry generally says. And in fact, in the 2023 and 2024 report, they have in fact said that medical practitioners are the largest violators of the ASCI guidelines, right? Whereas 30 to 40% of reporting has come from medical practitioners, right? And even the ASCI guidelines does specifically mention both about hospitals and about social media agencies. Now, coming back to the Patanjali case, the Supreme Court has said that when it comes to these particular kind of advertisements under the Magic Remedy, the Drugs and Magic Remedy Act, those ones, even someone associated with the doctor, like social media influencers, like branding agencies, marketing agencies, all of these people can also be held liable because of the level of egregiousness there. So it's like you have to take a approach which is tempered here. That's what I would say. I wouldn't say that don't say no to, like, let's say somebody like a hospital putting up your image or something, as long as the messaging is just that we provide like good care, we take care of our patients, things like that, which are generally like positive and which don't disparage anyone, which don't give some false hopes. Right? That would be my line there.
I completely agree with you on that. I think the messaging is very clear, and I think from I was actually very lucky that I worked with Bhatia Hospital in Taradev. It's multi-specialty hospital, and while we didn't have the resources of, say, a big chain like Apollo, etc., it had the ability to get us directly in touch with the marketing department and everything. So before they attributed anything to my name, before they put up my pictures anywhere, and not just me, every other consultant on their panel, we had to sign off on it. So then they actually gave us the thing, and we had to physically sign off on it. It wasn't on email, it wasn't on anything, but our signature went off on it. Only with our approval would that be. It could be as something as innocuous as just the name of my department and my photograph, but it went off with my signature on it, which I think is a very good practice, because on both sides it shows accountability. You can't just put up anything, and I think everyone was very mindful of that. This particular case with this doctor really struck out because in all likelihood he's probably the sole proprietor or the medical director of his own facility, which is unfortunate, because then the whole and soul, like if he's the CEO or the medical director, he's signing off on these campaigns. And probably and it's I don't think that in a case like this, he can fully wash his hands off of the responsibility and hand it over to the social marketing as the social media agency. It has to be, like you said, a more shared responsibility that both could be liable for it, right?
Also, just to add to that, I
You're
think,
on mute. I'm sorry.
yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Just
Very much.
just to add to that, I think it is like better if everybody is just mindful about generally how their image is used, right? Remember that like your likeness and your image are proprietary, right? So there is an intellectual property sort of protection which is anyway given to you, right? So you don't want a situation today where, let's say that you leave the hospital and you're someone who's like very well acclaimed. Let's say you're one of the top doctors in that hospital. uh, 2 years down the line, you don't want your not even 2 years. Let's say 6 months down the line, you still don't want your imagery used, right? So it would be helpful if you look through your agreements with your hospitals even when you're joining, with respect to what they can and cannot do with your imagery, right? Especially today with AI and all of that, it becomes really impossible for you to keep a track of exactly how your imagery is being used, right?
Yeah.
I mean, on a side note, all of the Hollywood Actors Guild, which had that whole protest last year, the main
Yeah.
reason for it was because they didn't want their image and likeness used, right?
Yeah.
They didn't want someone like, let's say, using it for an advertisement or using it for a movie and not giving them the rights, right? I mean, why aren't we thinking ourselves in the same way when corporations are coming in and using our like image and likeness, right? We need
Yeah.
to have some level of control over it. We need to ensure that it is used in a manner that we are comfortable with as professionals, right? So I think that's also something that you should like be mindful of. Review all of these things when you're getting into an agreement. You don't just look at like how much you're getting paid and what your bonus is. Also look at like what they can do. Can they use your image tomorrow? Like you should have some sort of a restriction on like AI use of images anyway. You don't want them putting out a video of you operating on someone when you didn't actually do it, right? With AI, it's like very easy to do it nowadays.
Very easy right now. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I was going to bring that up later, but thank you so much for bringing that up, because it is genuinely a problem right now where we are using AI tools, and a tool, like I always say, a tool can be used or misused. And I was the biggest proponent of generative AI when it came out. I still am. I believe in using it responsibly. But you're right. If there is any scope for misuse, it's this one. When you're putting a doctor's likeness on things or around things, using things that they would never otherwise endorse or approve of. And that's going to be the thing about proving it later on. You can disprove it. You can actually submit it and say that this has been AI generated. It can be proven with the digital signature. But the very fact of going through that process is traumatic by itself. So yes, looking especially the younger doctors, the ones who are just starting off their clinics and everything, it's so tempting when when you're given this contract, and like you said, with a lot of bonuses, we can use your image here and everything. But yes, definitely reading our contracts is something that I feel I never did at the age of 24. I just signed on the dotted line when I was told. But yes, now I regret a lot of the things that I signed on for. But now I think that's a great lesson for younger doctors to know right now.
Yeah, thanks for that. And are there any points for agencies also to get that, like how the healthcare market is, are there any specific points that you have to just so that this
Yeah.
the should be written there in the agreement. We have found that people is approved. What's the purpose?
Yeah. Um, yeah, so I think this a general sort of hygiene and like SOP practice here would be like really helpful. Just knowing firstly like what some of the absolute red lines are, right? With respect to advertising, with respect to what you can say and what you cannot say. I think that should be the baseline from which you start, right? And then of course things like the ASCI guidelines and like the NMC 2023 code can be something which is used very heavily as your prescriptive sort of contours under which you can operate, right? So I think that is one way of looking at it. I think as a agency which is specifically doing digital marketing for healthcare brands and for hospitals and for doctors, these are things that they should be aware of, right? While that is being said, it doesn't mean that you can't be creative, right? It gives you an avenue to be creative while still making sure that the patients aren't being misled, right? I think that is the fine line. And honestly, both as someone who like look. I also work with a couple of digital marketing brands to help them on their contractual side with clients, right? So that is also something that I tell them. If a client is pushing very hard and telling you things like, these are the things that we want to do. We want to, let's say advertise in comparison to, let's say, another brand or another hospital, things like that. That is something that you should like push back on and say that, look, we just aren't the kind of people who do something like this, right? I think professionalism from both sides here is very important, because it's very easy to to kind of be very blasé about this and not do anything about it. But it's more helpful for you as a professional, and of course your reputation goes along with your profession, as we know, both as doctors and as lawyers.
Yeah.
Right. So being on the right side here and being above board is very important. And I think that you shouldn't work with someone on either side who tries to push the boundaries. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Just in case, say for example, the creative goes out, okay. Maybe superficially when we go through our life and we don't really find anything wrong about it. But if the other side, if the hospital owner approves that you it, what would be like, moment maybe whatever gets approved. Maybe the agency has done something which does not look really, something which is wrong, but later on it happens to be wrong. I'm just saying a very a scenario like that. Generally, what should be the practice? Say, for example, if we have the approval from the hospital, will the blame fall on the hospital, or will the agency will also be accountable, or what way does it go really?
See, I mean, practically, I think probably Dr. Lakshmi would be better suited to answer that question. But from a legal lens, I feel like if it has gone out and like you're saying, right, that there is something there which is against the law or something which is questionable. My advice would be to like pull it down and then issue like a public apology, right? That's what it would
Got it,
be.
yeah.
Especially like in today's social media world, you don't want like anything on Twitter or Instagram blows up instantaneously, right?
Yeah.
It takes hardly any time, like 10 to 15 minutes for people to pick it up, and then if
Exactly.
it goes viral, then it blows out of all proportions, right? So I think it's better to take some more time upfront and then make sure that everything is fine before publishing it. But suppose, like you said, it goes out and then things aren't looking very kosher, then you try and do damage control. That's what I would say.
It is.
Exactly. And I
That's
see that, the moment that something, sorry, yes, Dr. You want to add?
No, I agree with what Ms. Atta said completely, because it's not the court of law is one thing. The court of public opinion is a completely different ballgame.
Exactly.
You're dealing with keyboard warriors and a lot of uh, commentary on your brand, and now with doxing and all, it's kind of scary, for doctors if they really take. And I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit more partial towards the doctors and the brand, the face of the brand, where it's the hospital or the doctor, the clinic, but they are the ones in the limelight. The social media agency, nobody's going to go down the social media agency's door and start protesting there. They're going to protest at the doctor's door and at his house, maybe, or at his clinic at the hospital. And if they really get angered about it, I'm hoping that that there are various checks and measures for it to not become like that. But you never know what can trigger some people. You really never know what can blow up into a
Exactly.
controversy these days. So
Exactly.
I think the flip side of it is that we end up, two things can happen on an advertising campaign point of view. You may want to jump on a trend that's very current at the moment. You may want to do it, but because of what you said, taking the time to think about the repercussions of it, you end up losing that trend or losing that jump that you may have capitalized on. That's one thing, and we have to be aware that our campaigns run way slower, and it's almost at a snail's pace. So something that's relevant today, like for example, a company I know, for a kidney day post, cause it was really not anything relevant, but for a verbiage that could have been misconstrued in some way, we went way 6 months past World Kidney Day. So then that post is irrelevant. It just doesn't hold true anymore, right? So we deal with that very slow approval processes, and so we don't really end up meeting the target that we want to meet, which is visibility and improve patient footfall in many clinics. You can't do that. You're not getting the results of that campaign at all. And B, even if you do, you're going to come up with very generic content, very safe content, very boring content, to be honest, and you end up looking like every other hospital out there, because all of us are following these strict rules. We can't say anything unusual, we can't promote ourselves in any way, we can't. And that's the general frustration of a pure advertising professional versus, someone. So when I'm dealing with the leads on these projects, they're like, but why can't we do this? I was like, but we can't. Like, it's not possible. It'll never go through medical legal review. It'll just never happen. So it's a very frustrating place to be in, because you're sacrificing a lot for the sake of proprietary and everything, right? So sometimes then I'm sorry, it may be a segue, but most doctors are like, I don't want to be bothered. Like, it's just something that it's too much for us to look at, and we just don't want to bother with it. So especially with this particular incident that you brought up, the screenshot of it, if you see what the doctor had to go through, he was basically, I don't see anything that happened to the agency involved or the marketers involved. He was let go of from his job, right? So it was the full effect was on him. And it's also your society. Doctors are a very close knit society, just I'm sure lawyers are. Like, we all know what the other person is doing. So it's a lot of reputation damage that needs to be controlled. But yes, an apology, a public apology, is on the cards for sure. Something that, I'm not sure what the legal ramifications are, whether you can take it back, pay a fine. That would, I guess, be case by case. But in the court of public opinion, a public apology and retraction of the post would probably be your best bet. I don't know what you could do about your job though, if it goes, to be honest.
Let's go to the next point. Then I have another slide.
Yeah.
So you can see my screen. Yeah. Is my screen clear?
Yeah.
Visible? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
This is another thing. No, this is from a dermatologist, the Association of IADVL, the Indian Association of Dermatologists, Venereologists, and Leprologists. So they are coming up with a code. Basically, November 30th, the conference being conducted. We are actually talking about this more in detail in a very lengthy video about what in this case of dermatology. They say that 10 to 30 lakhs, at least 10 to 30 lakhs, uh, like young doctors are actually through their Instagram profile by promoting products, which is actually not ethical. So they did a lot of work actually. They started conducting November one. There was this release also released by the same association here in Hyderabad. They did another press release, I believe, on 22nd May in another location, Bhubaneswar. So a lot of these things in association they are doing, and also they published the entire advisory committee complaint from another social media ethical guidelines for IADVL members and all that. So what are your thoughts on this before we go to ASCI?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad you brought this up, because dermatology is actually something which is like kind of little more in the gray zone than the others, right? Because even under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, right? So there is a little bit of nuance as to what like dermatology is. Now again, like, this has to be looked at in context, right? Because the Drugs and Cosmetics Act is a 1954 act, right? And like a lot of the dermatological practices that we do today are something that are very recent, right? Especially things like enhancements and things like that, right? I know that there is a raging debate, especially in the US, which is happening right now, and in the Middle East, because they use a lot more sort of enhancements than us. You can go to any clinic and get a Botox there. You don't even have to go to a registered doctor. Of course, let's not even get into like peptides and all of that. Right? That's a whole like different scene altogether, right? The whole like anti-aging and all of that has really taken off. I think maybe that's for another time. Uh, but when we're talking specifically about dermatology, honestly, there is a bit of a gray zone there, right? So as far as things like things like just saying that, like, look, we can help you with these things, like we can help you with acne and things like that, right? All of that is fine, right? But as long as you make certain therapeutic claims, right, saying that we will be able to treat these things, we will be able to, let's say, cure things like astigmatism, pigmentation, something like that, then again, that is like, yeah, is essentially an endorsement for your treatment, right? Which again is not allowed, right? So you have to be careful even as a dermatologist as to what you can say. And as Ilyas has pointed out, the Indian Dermatology Association, IADBL, has an anti-quackery legal and ethics committee, which has recently come up, its Karnataka branch, which is where I'm based in Bangalore. They have come up with they've come up with these guidelines on, like, what are the things that they can say when it comes to social media, right? So they have a social media etiquette guidelines for members. I'm not sure if the other states also have a similar guidelines, but I mean, like, maybe that can be looked at as like a general, like, good practice. So they also talk about, like, what are the things that you can say with respect to, like, brand deals and things like that, right? So let's say that you're, like, advertising some sort of I don't know, like sunscreen, or like nighttime lotion, things like that, right? So what are the things that you can say there? You can say particular things with respect to, let's say that it uh, your skin, or like your sleep or something like that, right? But you can't say things like, okay, it's like a cure for something, things like that, right? So I think the nuance is there, but I think the red lines are still as for any other doctor and for any other advertiser.
Yeah. So I have I feel like I have two prongs of approach for this, right? As part of a lot of what I do for a healthcare brand, and it can be something big as Hindustan Lever or whatever. So if they have this area for like sunscreens, which are cosmeceutical, um, for us to say that claim, the claim that says 7 times more likely to reduce dark spots, it's twice as likely to reduce signs of acne. There are, of course, what we do is we break up the component into its ingredients. We research those ingredients. We say what effect in large trials that ingredient has had on the particular condition, and it has been verified by PubMed articles. And to get that one line, there are maybe 25 articles that we've had to go through to support the fact that that ingredient causes that effect, and therefore helps with this condition. At the same time, the company itself has its own trials. So they have data on file that says they have a group of, and they have all these studies that they have to compulsorily link to their marketing materials to say that I have conducted these large scale studies minimum. And for anyone, large scale can is very subjective as well. It can be 25 people, 50 people, 100 people, but they have used this combination of products, not the brand, but this combination of ingredients in their sunscreen, because of which we've had a X to Y difference in consumer feedback, that it has improved, that they have seen this improvement. So when we say that line, when a brand says this line and says that this is more likely to happen, if it comes from a huge enough brand, there's a lot of medical legal review that has gone through that for it to even be on that marketing material in the first place. And when I am then, so I've been on both sides. I've been on the, let's research all of this material and give you the papers that you need to substantiate your claim. And once I have the claim, I'm as a writer or a content creator can only use these claims in my marketing materials, right? So it's a very at least till brand deliverable, it is a very structured process that has been reviewed multiple times. Now, when the problem here is when, like you said, when a dermat influencer or a doctor is approached by these brands and say, now endorse it for us. I was part of one of these really old KOL campaigns where the brand had to basically reach out to 25 dermats, send a care package to them with their products, and say, "Doctor, use it. This is for free. Please use this product and let us know what you think. And based on that, please give us a reel and explaining about what your experience has been in this." When we wrote the reel scripts for them, because it's also part of the campaign to write the script for them, that script also cannot be like, it's in the doctor's tone. So if he talks in Hindi, if he talks in Marathi, if he talks in a regional language, if he starts off with a skit, whatever, that is in their creator voice or creator tone. But we have our claims. In that script, you have to mention that it contains X% of this ingredient. You have to mention that it causes Y effect. You have to mention that it is a combination of these three ingredients, and that's why it potentially will work. The way that it is phrased, there are writers behind this to make sure that that is adequately phrased so that it is not committing one to the other, which is why I believe this 10 to 30 lakh bubble is allowed to consistently go month on month, year on year, and it can be guidelines after guidelines from the IADVL. They can have, but it's not legally binding because simply because it's not just a simple thing as a dermat coming on this your screen showing you a product and saying, this is a great product, please use it. No, the way that they will phrase it has been legally reviewed by the brand itself. So when they're saying it, it'll be a dermat saying, I have used this product for 5 years. You cannot condemn a dermat from giving you their opinion on a product that they have been using for 5 months to 5 years. You can never say that this is their opinion as a consumer. Now they're talking as a consumer. They're just wearing the lab coat and saying it, but they are giving their viewpoint as a consumer. There is no legal action there, right? Also, they can say these are 5 products that and they give you that brand in a list of other brands. So I can't be promoting 5 brands. I just think that these are great for this price point. Again, an opinion versus this is the great product and we need to do this only. That is the nuance, like you were saying, that every brand has kind of established with the KOLs and the influencers that they're tying up with. The other part of this is, are the doctors allowed to take money for this? Because then it becomes, and then that's the question I'm going to throw again to you, Mr. Athif, is because we're not just influencers, we're med influencers, right? We're in a different category of influencers with a different set of responsibilities. So when we put that hashtag ad on our posts, when we are endorsing this, how is that allowed right now?
Just to tell you that I have 7 minutes to go, right, to complete the session today, Dr. Lakshmi.
We are way beyond our time, actually.
7 minutes. We can have 7 minutes max, and then as
Yeah.
you're answering this, I will put one more question also to you. One is about doctors who are coming on for Sensodine and another thing, saying that we are doctors from UK, US, and all that. How is that supposed to be understood? That is one thing. Another question that I have is, if you can answer it together, is about NMC is applicable for doctors. There was a case also about this. NMC is applicable for doctors, but what about the so for hospitals, how strong is actually can say that all this is really how is this supposed to be understood in the speaking with this more?
Yeah.
Then we can.
Sure. I will try to remember all of those questions.
Yeah, please. Because we will also have sessions like this more frequently because there's many things coming out now.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think as far as what Dr. Lakshmi asked with respect to advertisements and with respect to what you can actually say in advertisement, right? So as far as the ASCI guidelines goes, right, you can't really like bury it deep within like a hashtag, right? So what ends up happening, if you see a lot of like Instagram posts, they'll have like let's say 15 different things, and at the end there'll be one tiny AD hashtag, right? Which will really be buried and like no one who's like quickly scrolling through social media ever ends up checking, right? So the disclosure, they're very clear about what the disclosure looks like, right? The disclosure should be like upfront and very prominent. It has to be superimposed at the start of a video, and it has to be stated before the body or text which is appearing on the video, right? Or if you're like um, uh, let's say it's a voiceover, then you should call it out at the beginning of the audio or the voiceover, right? So like that being said, right, this is still a promotion, right? So I would say that anyway proceed with caution, right, when it comes to generally when it comes to generally saying that this is better than the other or anything like that. Again, that falls very much within the area of prohibited actions, right? Like Dr. Lakshmi said, maybe you can say things like, I personally find that I've used like these 5 things before I go to sleep for my nighttime, like let's say like
Yeah.
face glow up or whatever it is for me to get that look that I want to, and guess what, this works great for me for my skin. I think things like that are still okay.
Yeah.
Then, as a consumer of like dermatology products and all, I mean, that would be something that I would find helpful, right?
Yeah.
So, I think if it is shown under the light of educational sort of public service, public announcement, I think that's okay, right?
Yeah.
So that is on the first point. I think coming to Mr. Ilias' question on what the implications are of a foreign doctor, which is a UK or US doctor, promoting something else. Honestly, the answer to that is that they aren't part of our like guidelines, right? So, like all of the guidelines that we have in India and the National Medical Council, all of that only applies to India qualified lawyers, right? So, I don't think that. That even legally speaking, they can really be held liable for saying something or not saying something. I think as a brand, the awareness should come from the brand as to what is right and what is wrong, right? It can be looked at simply as like, let's say, something with a little more weightage if you say that I am someone who's like, let's say, head of a medical council somewhere else. But other than that, I wouldn't really ascribe it much attention. I'm sorry, I didn't get your last question. If you could repeat that.
It's about NMC guidelines are applicable only to the hospitals, so only to the doctors. So what about the hospitals? So
Yeah.
there was a case fought by Max Hospital in this regard, saying that NMC is only for doctors, it's not for
Right.
hospitals. What is your and we talk about ASCI, we talk about a lot of other things, right? So how was what are the things to look out for when you talk about
Yes,
hospitals?
yes, yes. So I think that is something that we like. I had just like addressed before as well, that uh, the obligation remains on the doctor as an individual, right? So if you're saying something as part of your hospital group which is attributed to a particular doctor, I think that it is very well under the ambit of the NMC or any of the other regulators, including the Consumer Protection Court, to proceed against you, right? But as far as a hospital goes, they aren't held to the same standards, but the ASCI guidelines and the consumer protection will anyway apply to them, right? So I believe that as far as ASCI and consumer protection goes, with respect to what you can say and not making a false claim, that should apply regardless of whether you're a doctor, whether you're a hospital, whether you're an advertiser or a brand or like marketing agency, right? Or let's say you're anyone else, right? Sensodyne Pharmaceutical. It should apply to everybody, right?
Right.
Because that applies across the border. But as far as doctor goes, then they have a higher bar than this already set bar, which they have to think about for themselves, independent of what the hospital chooses.
True.
Thank you.
Such
Thank
as
you very much. And this
yeah.
was only 1 minute ago, and we will have Dr. Lakshmi do the concluding remarks. But before that, let me tell you, this was a very, very interesting discussion. Uh, Let me definitely we should right, we have one more time and go deeper into a lot of ideas coming in my mind, and I'm sure we're also thinking about it. We'll have a
100%.
second version, the continuation of this program in one of our other podcasts. Go to the concluding.
Please, because I think Mr. Elias had about 10 of these examples, and we thought we would get through to them in about 40 minutes, and we would have 20 minutes for Q&A. So clearly, we very much overshot our time on that, so which is a great indicator of how deep the conversation can go with this and how interesting it can be. So I second that. I would love to and have you again on behalf of AHMP invite you here again for a very interesting conversation on how this crux goes, medical legally as well. So thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. Celius, as always, thank you so much for your time. And with that, I'd like to conclude the session. For anyone watching, we do have a recording of this on our AHMP portal. It'll come under the webinar section. You can come and access it whenever you want after you register. We do have a bunch of episodes coming up as well with other very renowned speakers talking about various aspects of healthcare marketing in 2026. We have our next session on the 25th of July with Chitra Bhaskar again, and after that, Dr. Sumit Kapadia. So we encourage you to please tune in for our next few episodes. And with that, I'd like to conclude the session to have everyone a good weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please follow our
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.